Welcome to another Six Patterns video. My name is Max.
I'm Kevin.
And today we have a nice needle core biopsy for you, Kevin.
Great. Not only one, but it looks like a whole set of them, huh?
Yeah, 5. And boy, are those generous.
Yeah, so this must have been a big target. What do you know about this patient?
Well, this was a 45-year-old female who had a right lung mass.
Big one, I imagine.
Big one. Actually, the imaging said 13.5 centimeter mass.
Wow. So that's like at least half the thorax, and probably looked even worse if it collapsed the lung.
Right. Maybe a little bit of a mediastinal shift almost, because it's this big mass, right?
Huge.
So fortunately, I got this case and I looked at the sections, and I was immediately thinking about one particular diagnosis, because this looks for all the world
Like a keloid.
like a keloid scar.
Right.
And if you've seen keloid scars in the skin, it's the same thing as what you see here. Dense sort of bands of hyaline sclerosis.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks exactly like a keloid scar. In the lung, what do we call that?
Well, you can call it Pulmonary Hyalinizing Granuloma, which is usually not 13 centimeters.
And doesn't have granulomas.
And does not have granulomas. It's another one of those interesting misnomers in pathology. So no granulomas in pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma.
And if I tried to sell you that this was a pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma, not knowing any of the history, you'd say, sure, why not?
I'd say, sure, how big is it?
It looks classic for pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma. In fact, I showed this to the visitors. I said, the morphology here, this keloid type scarring, is classic for pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma. And then we talked about what an IPR was, instant pattern recognition. You see this in the lung, you say, okay, that's a...
Next case, the old pathologist next case.
But,
so in this case, you did not say next case. And why was that, do you think?
Well, it was the size.
Okay.
Primarily, it was the size.
Yeah,
because pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma is typically small. I went to the WHO. I said, what's the biggest pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma that's been described? And it was about half the size of this. I think it was 7 centimeters or maybe 5 centimeters, but not big, because it's probably a secondary reactive process, pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma.
Because if you've ever seen old histoplasmosis, the fibrosis around histoplasmosis and so-called sclerosing mediastinitis occurring in the setting of post-histoplasmosis tends to have this keloid-like sclerotic appearance. So I think it's a perfectly good hypothesis. I think looking around here, I'm looking at these collagen bundles, and some of them look to be intersecting in weird, haphazard ways, and that always gives me pause and makes me worried that I'm missing a so-called desmoplastic mesothelioma. But even if it were that diagnosis, we would not be able to make it on this tissue, because there actually are criteria you have to meet before you diagnose desmoplastic mesothelioma.
And I agree. There's a disorganization here.
Disorganization.
That makes you
pause.
As a pulmonary pathologist, you see anything in the thorax area that has a lot of fibrosis and disorganization, you should always say, okay, could it be desmoplastic mesothelioma?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the one other thing that bugged me about this when I was sharing it with the visitors was that there are areas where the cellularity is a little increased, and they're a little bit atypical and hyperchromatic. And I'll tell you, most pulmonary hyalinizing granulomas have almost 0 cells.
Right.
It's just the keloid
They're
scar.
remarkable on their acellularity.
Exactly. And so these ones, this one has some cellularity. It's kind of patchy throughout the biopsy. Like there's some areas with cells and there's other areas with no cells. So I was considering what gives you a huge mass in the thorax region that has dense keloid-like scarring and some atypical cells in the background.
Well, to make a big mass, the number one on the board for that description would be so-called solitary fibrous tumor of pleura, or localized fibrous tumor, that category of disease. This one is mainly sclerosis, if it is that diagnosis, but there aren't a whole lot of things that will make a 13.5 centimeter mass that's all sclerotic collagen bundles. So you got to kind of say, is this a sampling problem? 13 centimeters, we're looking at what, less than a centimeter? Probably half a centimeter of actual tissue.
True.
With all those cores. So maybe there are other areas of this lesion, of this tumor, that are completely different. So what can you do in this situation, Max?
Well, I think we'll add on to the differential diagnosis. I think you have to work it up for mesothelioma.
Yeah.
I think it just doesn't make any sense not to work it up for mesothelioma.
So just get a pan-cytokeratin stain, honestly, because if it's a desmoplastic mesothelioma, there should be a lot more keratin-positive cells here than you think there are.
Exactly.
And if there aren't, chasing down whether or not those are WT1, CK5-6, calretinin, all that is probably going to be overkill. So I think a focused approach in your immunos is going to make most sense in a case like this. So do some stains to rule out undersampled solitary fibrous tumor. That's what I would say.
I did stains to rule out desmoplastic mesothelioma. They were negative. Keratin negative, WT1 negative, D240 negative, calretinin negative.
You're such a thorough guy.
EMA negative, CAM5.2.
Here it is, 9 o'clock at night, and you're still wearing a tie.
Still going strong here. So the other thing I got was a STAT6. Now, most, solitary fibrous tumor, the classic stains that you think about for solitary fibrous tumor, CD34, CD99. But those stains aren't outstanding for solitary fibrous tumor.
Right.
There's a new stain.
BCL2, I think.
Yeah, BCL2 too. Yeah. But there's a new stain, STAT6, which is pretty good for solitary fibrous tumor. So we did that stain in this case.
Is that a nuclear stain? Should we be looking for a nuclear stain?
That's the beauty of STAT6. Like you said one time in one of these videos, pathologists love nuclear stains because it gives you this sense of accomplishment, this nice, crisp nuclear stain. You're not sitting there wondering, is there a little bit of cytoplasmic blush or not?
Is that little napsin around the edge?
Yeah, this is a nice nuclear stain. And you can see every single cell. And actually, I would say that there's a far more cellularity here than we
recognize on the H&E.
On the H&E.
Wow.
Every cell strongly positive. This is a solitary fibrous tumor that's masquerading as a pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma. And it's the size and it's the cellularity that should make you say, before I just sign this out as pulmonary hyalinizing granuloma, let's give it its workup.
Perfect. I think we covered that.
I think so. So I hope you enjoyed the case, and don't forget to like and comment below, and we'll see you with the next one.